Let's talk about things that we have no business talking about. Uh, some stupid questions to start. Is the death of a child something disturbing to you? Yeah. Yeah, it is. I think it's probably disturbing to everyone right now. Well, does it matter whether or not it takes place in fiction, like in movies or whatever? No, it does. It's disturbing no matter where you find it, right? And fine. Well, if that's the case, then does it follow that there's a certain things that an artist or a writer should avoid in their art to not piss people off? Well, I think the answer to that is you got to ask the question: what are the stakes? You know, if you're creating art just for yourself, or painting or whatever, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day who you piss off. Then of course it doesn't matter. But if you're involved in creating art that people do give a shit that you're gonna sell, that has money involved in it, and people's interest is affected, then of course, yes, you don't want to create something you're gonna piss people off. You got to make sure your thing makes money, right? Now, I guess that's what this video is about. Is that I want to just thinking out loud about what are the relations between corporate and artistic interests. And I know it's fucked up to be talking about kids dying and calling that artistic interest or whatever. But yeah, it is messed up. But it's the example that's so okay. This is where I need you guys. Is that I'm in a writing class right now, and I got this project that I'm working on, and that I'm kind of in the middle of having to deal with kind of these things. I don't need to change it to make my professor mad. Who gives a fuck? But it's just, if this happens in the future, you never know. So what would you do if you were making something, and the person that signs your checks is telling you that your art needs to be changed? I don't know. It's just thinking about. So I want to pitch my story to you guys. If you guys have a couple minutes, and then tell me in the comments about just what you're thinking about what I'm talking about, or if you think the idea is workable. So the story is messed up. It's kind of my take on the Silence of the Lambs. If you don't know what it is, brief nutshell. Rookie cop solves a serial murder case with the help of a criminal psychologist. And yes, that movie is a little twisted, and the twistedness comes from the murderer, who he murders and for what reason, and where the murders take place, and that's why it's weird. So what's my story? The story involves an orphanage. I hope I'm saying that right. Where the owners of the orphanage kill their own children. And the protagonist of the story is going to be a police officer, a cop. And this cop is a rookie. And this is the way I want to frame the story, is that this cop's a rookie, he's young, he's a devout Catholic, and his head is filled with ideals. Well, everyone's head's filled with ideals, but this guy's got a very, very... He's like a Boy Scout, let's say. Sees the world in black and white. There's good, there's bad. He's a force for good, and that's what it is. And what I want the story to be is a series of encounters where this kid who's filled with ideals is forced to encounter the real world, and that encounter causes friction with him and his ideals, and makes him call into question what he believes, and really challenges him. And the ending of the film, I want there to be a transformation for this guy. This guy comes from an ideal, and he ends up being real scarred by what he's seen, and is a changed person, for the better, for the worse. I don't know. Now, this is my thinking. Any significant personal revelation, a change in one's worldview, or a change of ideals, necessarily involves a kind of traumatic experience of some kind. Most of the time they're unpleasant, but I guess we can change from positive things like love or something. But this is not one of those stories. So, what could be more traumatic than not only failure, but a failure to rescue an innocent life? And not just an innocent life, but a child's life. So that's where I'm going with this, is that in the end of the film, there's going to be a situation where this main character needs to rescue this kid. And this kid, his life is on a ticking clock. Okay, he's in the attic or something. And and this cop needs to rescue him before time runs out. And, something happens and he's late. The kid is murdered. The cop makes all the right choices. He finds out who did what, and everyone's dealt justice, but he's just too short of rescuing the kid. I guess that's the one justice that never happens. And he walks away from that. Totally destroyed, you know? What are you going to do? It's Chinatown. One of those kind of endings. So that's really it. Now, the concern I have is that, yeah, I pitched this idea more or less to a friend of mine, and the first immediate concern that they gave me, which, really, dude? You're gonna have a kid die? I mean, well, is the kid at least gonna die off screen? I couldn't even answer that question. So, that's it, is that the story, the way that I'm thinking about it right now, has the death of a child as an important component that drives the character transformation, the revelation. And if it's too dark and too grim, maybe I can change it to something else. But what do you think? The way that, just what I gave you, that rough edge, does it seem like a movie that can at least function? That could at least potentially grow into something that would maybe capture your interest? That's what I'm thinking about. Because I think it's pretty good. If it's not pretty good, then I'll change it. But meanderings for today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for listening.